you think the Spanish Inquisition was about hunting heretics, you've been lied to. Forget the hooded figures and the bonfires for a moment. Instead, visualize this. The year is 1568. In a dark, forgotten chamber beneath Toledo's cathedral, an apparatus of pure malice is being applied to a woman named Elva del Campo. It's not the infamous rack that rips bone from socket. It's a precision tool, a segmented metal wedge, cold and clinical, forced into her mouth. With 3 precise turns of a screw, her jaw shatters internally. 6 hours later, they release her. No blood, no visible marks, just a forced silence, a confession extracted without a single observable bruise. It was the perfect crime, trauma without evidence. But that horrific ingenuity is not even the core of this dark history. Before we uncover this systemic injustice, take a moment to subscribe. If you believe forgotten history matters, hit that button. And while you're at it, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Because the secrets we're exposing here are directly connected to power structures that operate today. What I'm about to reveal isn't a history of medieval cruelty. It's a detailed, 356-year political and financial campaign against women's autonomy. The 3 secret reasons why the church made female victims the majority will force you to reevaluate the modern control of women's bodies and wealth. By the time this video ends, you'll understand why academic historians tried to bury the sheer statistics. The fact that nearly 70% of all Inquisition victims were female. That ratio is the smoking gun. This isn't a coincidence. It's a strategy. In the next few minutes, we peel back the official narratives to expose. First, the brutal economic scheme that systematically turned independent, wealthy widows into the holy office's most valuable financial targets. Second, the chilling catalog of torture instruments, engineered exclusively for the female anatomy, that the church meticulously scrubbed from all official records. Third, how the use of these invisible torments allowed the Inquisition to maintain its sacred reputation, while simultaneously erasing entire female bloodlines and seizing their estates. Do not click away. The patterns you're about to recognize are still active in today's global systems, and that knowledge could be critical. As I mentioned, only a fraction of you are subscribed. If this story fuels your outrage or challenges your understanding, join us. Next week, we're exposing the medieval abortion underground that the church spent centuries trying to eliminate. Now, let's look at the hidden mandate. When King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella established the Spanish Inquisition in 1478, they sold it as a religious cleansing, a hunt for Jewish converts and heretics. That was the public relations shield. The true operational mandate was focused on profit and iron control. And women, especially those with accumulated wealth, social influence, or medicinal knowledge, were the ideal prey. Let's dissect the inconvenient data. Comprehensive studies by researchers like James Contouras and Gusto Henningsen, who analyzed over 44,000 Inquisition case files, found a staggering truth. Between 60% and 70% of those accused were women. Process that fact. In an intensely patriarchal society where men controlled the law, the land, and the pulpit, women somehow constituted the overwhelming majority of spiritual threats. This math only works if you understand the insidious reality of what was truly happening. The Spanish Inquisition became a pioneer in a terrifying new technology: the silent interrogation. While a male heretic faced the standard rack, leaving obvious, visible damage like dislocated shoulders, or the strappado, which crippled joints, women were subjected to a distinct methodology. Their devices were designed with 3 non-negotiable criteria. Criterion 1. Ensure physical evidence vanishes rapidly. This meant temporary bruising, no blood, and internal injuries that could not be easily diagnosed. Criterion 2. Focus the damage on reproductive anatomy, intending not just pain, but the systematic destruction of their capacity for motherhood, fertility, and sexuality. Criterion 3. Use the process to destroy a woman's psychological and social credibility, ensuring she appeared hysterical, delusional, or inherently unreliable, rather than merely extracting a signed confession. Why is this relevant right now? Because what you are seeing is not just a piece of history. It is a blueprint, a clear, effective strategy for how authoritarian powers dismantle women's autonomy, control their wealth, and manage their physical bodies, all while maintaining a facade of moral purity. Once you identify this pattern, you will see it everywhere. But the fundamental question remains unanswered. Why this specific focus on women? The answer is not theological. It's not based on superstition. It is based on three coldly calculated structural strategies that rendered women the most economically profitable and controllable targets in the history of the Spanish state. Let me introduce you to the first one. I must warn you, once you grasp the naked economic incentive, the entire structure of the terror becomes horrifyingly clear. Picture yourself as a widow in 1485 Toledo. Your husband is gone, and you've just inherited his shipping business, 3 valuable properties in the city's trade quarter, and enough liquid assets to live completely independently. You are now the single most dangerous yet most vulnerable person in the city. The pattern that emerges in 40% of female Inquisition cases is a direct targeting of independent single women and wealthy widows. This is not historical conjecture. It is a documented fact. The Archivo Histórico Nacional, Spain's official archive, holds thousands of detailed property seizure documents. When historians cross-referenced the dates of these seizures with the dates of the accusations and arrests, the correlation was perfect. The spikes in accusations mirrored the transfers of high-value property. Let's trace the insidious mechanics. Phase 1. The woman inherits the substantial estate. She is now wealthy, visible, and isolated. Phase 2. The anonymous accusation. The denunciation could be filed by a greedy nephew, a rival business competitor, or simply a neighbor coveting the land. The Inquisition didn't require witnesses for their accusations. They accepted anonymous denunciations, no evidence, no concrete proof needed. The script flips instantly. Step 3. The arrest and the trial. The burden of proof is brutally reversed. The accused must now definitively prove her own innocence. And this is the moment where the strategic genius of silent torture shifts from cruel to critical. Step 4. The confession, extracted through pain. Crucially, the torture is engineered to leave no permanent external marks. Step 5. The comprehensive confiscation of all assets. The wealth is split. 1/3 funds the crown, 1/3 enriches the church coffers, and the final third directly funds the Inquisition's operations. Everyone in power profits. Only the woman loses everything. Consider the true story of Maria Gonzalez. In 1485, this prominent Toledo widow faced the anonymous charge of Judaizing, secretly observing Jewish rites. Arrested instantly, she was subjected to a specialized device, the breast spider. This was not for show. It was a metal claw, sometimes heated to a dull red, designed to shred internal breast tissue without immediately breaking the skin or causing surface bleeding. After 6 relentless hours, Maria confessed to every impossible charge. Meeting with demons, desecrating the sacred Eucharist, teaching heretical prayers to her children. None of it was true, but all of it was legally sufficient to convict her. Within days, her massive estate was seized. Her daughters were stripped of their dowries and ruined socially. The church's balance sheet swelled by the equivalent of 3,000 gold ducats. This is the horrifying genius. 3 months later, when the trial transcripts were made public, Maria's superficial bruising had vanished. The internal damage was invisible. Her confession was declared voluntary. The church successfully upheld its veneer of saintly mercy while systematically committing state-sanctioned theft of female wealth. If you're finding this history shocking, and if you're seeing how these historic patterns echo in today's political landscape, please take a moment. Hit the like button and make sure to subscribe, because this is just the beginning of what they tried to hide. Yet, the economic incentive, the theft of assets, was merely the entry point. The true objective ran far deeper than simple money. The Inquisition wasn't just stealing property. They were seizing something infinitely more critical: female power. The second core strategy zeroed in on the one source of authority women could never truly surrender. When you understand this target, the specific, calculated nature of the cruelty becomes crystal clear. Here is the statistic that demands your focus. 60% of all female accusations involve charges tied directly to sexuality, medicine, specifically midwifery, or the supposed use of love magic. The central theme was not religious deviance. It was female knowledge and control over the female body. Why? Because the medieval midwife possessed power the church desperately sought to monopolize. The power over life itself. Think about her role. She autonomously made medical decisions, bypassing male priests and male physicians. She was the sole repository of generational knowledge concerning birth control, early abortion techniques, and pain management during labor. She operated entirely outside the rigid structure of male institutional power. She was essentially ungovernable. To counter this, the Inquisition engineered a category of torture specifically designed to shatter that power, not just to cause pain, but to destroy the functional source of female authority. Let me detail 3 devices, rarely described in standard history texts because their existence is too morally disturbing to acknowledge. The pair of anguish. Metal devices, shaped like a bulb, were inserted into the vagina and violently cranked open by a screw mechanism. This caused massive internal tearing, catastrophic infection, and almost guaranteed permanent reproductive damage. The primary function was not confession. It was systematic sterilization. The breast ripper, 4-pronged, sharp claws, sometimes heated, designed to tear and destroy mammary tissue. The surface wounds would eventually heal, but the internal injury often made the process of nursing impossible. Again, the goal was the destruction of maternal and nurturing capacity. Hydroabdominal torture. This was a variant of waterboarding. Women were forced to consume colossal amounts of water while agonizing pressure was applied to the lower abdomen, near the bladder and womb. Ruptured internal organs were a common consequence. The crucial factor: almost no visible evidence was left behind. These horrific techniques were not improvised. They are systematically documented in the Directorium Inquisitorum, the Inquisitors' manual finalized by Niccolò Eymerich in 1376. Section 14 explicitly details different torture applications based on gender. The Church didn't just overlook this cruelty, they codified and institutionalized it. In 1529, Isabel de la Cruz, a respected midwife in Guadeloupe, became a scapegoat after a local noblewoman delivered a stillbirth. The accusation: demonic pacts causing infant death. Under torture with the vaginal pair, Isabel confessed to every fantasy: flying to forbidden Sabbaths, sleeping with demons, and using illicit potions to murder babies in the womb. She was condemned and burned alive. But here is the devastating epilogue. After her execution, the town of Guadeloupe's maternal mortality rate tripled. Why? Because the remaining midwives either fled or went into deep hiding. Their vital medical knowledge vanished. Women and infants died as a direct, calculated consequence. The Inquisition did not just persecute a woman. They deliberately triggered a medical dark age for an entire community. But as brutal as the economic theft and the reproductive control were, they pale in comparison to the third final strategy. The third layer of attack was pure psychological annihilation. Now, let me reveal the Church's most sophisticated and psychologically devastating weapon. Imagine enduring hours of excruciating torture until you confess to the impossible. Flying to witches' Sabbaths, engaging in sexual acts with demons, even the ritualistic consumption of unbaptized infants. Absurd, deranged admissions. And then, once you confess, the Inquisitors triumphantly present that statement as proof that women are inherently deceptive, emotionally unstable, and fundamentally unreliable witnesses. This is not casual cruelty. This is institutional gaslighting codified as legal policy. To achieve this, they needed instruments that could fracture a woman's mind while leaving her body adequately functional to stand before the court. The tongue restraint, iron clamps or restraints that physically immobilized the tongue during the trial proceedings, preventing the accused from speaking effectively in her own defense. When she was finally permitted to speak, the physical damage often resulted in slurred or unclear speech, making her appear to the court as intoxicated, hysterical, or genuinely possessed. The repeated dunking chair. The victim was repeatedly secured to a chair and submerged in water until near drowning, followed by immediate revival. This leaves 0 broken bones, 0 bruises, just immense psychological trauma. When these women later recounted their confessions, Citing the torture, the court records simply noted that she had changed her testimony. This became irrefutable evidence of female duplicity. Systemic sleep deprivation. Women were deliberately kept awake in isolation cells for 72 hours or more, leading up to their trials. When they finally appeared before the judges, they were confused, paranoid, and fundamentally irrational, precisely matching the court's preconception of what a witch or a heretic should look like. Let's return to Elva del Campo, the woman from the start of this video. In 1568, her evidence was ludicrously simple: an accusation of merely not eating pork. Based on this, Inquisitors subjected her to a combined torture of the water application and the painful oral wedge. For 6 straight hours, she was repeatedly drowned and revived while her jaw was internally broken. Of course, she confessed to every charge. The next day, she immediately recanted, declaring the confession false and extracted by force. Her response? 8 more hours of torture. This time, her confession was permanent. The official trial records, meticulously preserved in Toledo's archives to this day, describe her final confession as freely given without coercion. The judges noted her momentary lapse in denying the truth, but praised her for returning to the truth upon reflection and prayer. The sheer sadism is embedded in the documentation. The official record warps Elva's actions to make her appear unstable. First confessing, then denying, then confessing again. It makes the Inquisitors look mercifully patient. And crucially, it established a legal precedent. Women's testimony is inherently unreliable. You've witnessed the economic motive and the control of the body. If you feel compelled to share this history that was deliberately hidden, hit the share button now, and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. We need to know how far this truth is spreading. Here's the truth modern historians uncovered. By analyzing the Inquisition's own immaculate archives, they found a chilling pattern. Educated women were disproportionately targeted. Women who could read complex Latin texts, women who owned books, women who had the intellectual capacity to potentially document the abuse being inflicted upon them. The silent tortures weren't just for hiding evidence from the public. They were a calculated act designed to destroy the credibility of the witnesses before they could ever attempt to testify. But the ultimate goal was even darker. This wasn't just about controlling individual women. The final, most disturbing strategy affected generations who weren't even born yet. What I'm about to share is the most shocking discovery modern researchers have made. It explains why Spain's economic and social recovery lagged centuries behind the rest of Europe. In the 1990s, Spanish historians took an unprecedented step. They traced the family lineage of Inquisition victims forward through time, following the daughters, granddaughters, and great-granddaughters. They discovered a systemic pattern of destruction. Women descending from a woman accused of witchcraft or heresy exhibited 85% lower rates of literacy, marriage, and property ownership compared to their peers, even 3 full generations later. Let the profound implication of that sink in. The torture of one mother in 1520 statistically predicted whether her great-granddaughter in 1620 would even learn to read. This was not an unforeseen side effect. It was the intended design. Here's the mechanism of destruction. Torment a mother, force a public, insane confession. The family name is permanently branded with heresy. The daughters become socially ruined. No respectable family will accept them in marriage. They are prohibited from inheriting property because tainted family lines lost legal status. They were barred from entering convents by the church itself. They were relegated to the lowest rungs of society, servants, beggars, or sex workers. And because the original torture was silent, the family could never prove the abuse, never seek justice, and couldn't even tell their ancestors' story without implicitly defending heresy. The brilliance was in the invisibility. Visible torture creates venerated martyrs. Silent torture only creates indelible shame. The scale of this calculated destruction is staggering. Conservatively, an estimated 150,000 women were formally accused across the Spanish territories between 1478 and the Inquisition's abolition in 1834. If we assume each persecuted woman had, on average, just 2 surviving daughters who then bore daughters, the ripple effects of this institutional terror touched millions of female lives across centuries. Here is the truly dark realization. The Inquisition mastered behavioral economics before the concept even existed. They expertly weaponized fear to create widespread self-censorship. Women learned a new, destructive social code. Avoid literacy. The ability to read was strategically associated with heresy. Do not accumulate wealth. Financial independence became an invitation for deadly accusations. Stop practicing medicine. Midwifery was functionally transformed into a suicidal profession. Flee independence. Widows and single women with assets were designated targets. The resulting historical consequences are not theoretical. They are quantifiably measurable. Educational collapse. Spanish female literacy around 1800 was equivalent to where French female literacy stood 2 centuries earlier, in 1600. The Inquisition cost women 200 years of academic advancement. Medical dark age. With the systematic persecution of midwives, maternal mortality rates spiked. Historians directly attribute thousands of excess maternal and infant deaths to the forced disappearance of female medical knowledge. Economic devastation. Female property ownership plummeted from roughly 30% in the 1400s to a stunningly low less than 5% by the 1600s. This represents a 25-point eradication of female economic power. The official end came in 1834. The torture devices were dismantled, and the dungeons were sealed. Yet, the invisible damage, the ingrained social patterns, persisted for another 100 years. The cultural fear of female education, the profound suspicion directed at women who possess property, the automatic assumption that a woman's testimony was unreliable. These ghosts haunted Spanish society long after the institution itself was dead. This is the power of silent violence. It meticulously erases the evidence of its own existence from history, while its devastating social effects echo forward through time. The Spanish Inquisition created a comprehensive blueprint for authoritarian control of women using invisible violence embedded within the legal framework. They proved you don't need highly visible mass atrocities to crush a population. You merely need systems that operate quietly and leave no medical evidence. Institutions that meticulously document their own legitimacy while committing abuse. Mechanisms that make the victims appear complicit in their own destruction. These patterns are far from extinct. Right now, in various nations, female activists are taken into detention centers where sophisticated torture leaves no forensic marks. Confessions are extracted and presented as voluntary, and families are financially and socially destroyed across generations through systematic exclusion. The crucial lesson here is not that we are living in the 15th century. The lesson is that when violence is made invisible, history can be easily rewritten. Documentation matters. Witnessing matters. And most importantly, believing women when they speak about systems designed to silence them. That is the most powerful act of historical resistance. I genuinely want you to reflect and comment below, but please be safe. What institutions in your modern world document their own legitimacy while systematically suppressing specific populations? What forms of violence are engineered to leave no tangible mark? This collective documentation, this shared recognition of patterns, is our most vital tool to prevent history from repeating itself. If this video has educated you, angered you, or motivated you to understand more, please subscribe right now. Thank you for watching, and remember, history is not about the past. It's about recognizing the patterns before they repeat.